Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, you're going to meet the Chief Commercial Officer for PredictView. They're out to make social media safer. We'll explain next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team, and the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, let's face it, all social media companies are trying to make a buck. They're trying to keep you on their platform as long as possible. And the problem with that is, let's suppose you started to search Robin Williams' suicide. They start to feed you more of that stuff. And if you're already having some mental health issues or some stress, suddenly they call that doom scrolling. Well, somebody to talk about that today is Dave Batt. He's the Chief Commercial Officer for PredictView. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Yes. So tell us more about PredictView. What is it?
It's an interesting company. It's turning social media into the best mental health tool available to anybody, any part of society. And effectively what it does, it's a specialized technology that users of social media platforms can add onto their platform and just monitor, have a buddy, have a companion along their side that says, here's how you're doing with your overall mental health and well-being.
Outstanding. We've got a couple of slides. Let's go ahead and put up the first one. And why don't you describe what we're looking at here?
Yeah, this is the application itself. And this is what 30 years of my experience in the technology industry just absolutely compelled me. A product that can go in and, like I mentioned, give an individual an easy way of setting it up on their phone and just having a companion right alongside them and say, I have identified signals potentially that would suggest that you're dealing with anxiety, you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with whatever the mental health condition would be. And it presents it in a way to an individual that is unlike anything in the market. And what I mean by that is this is not something where you fill in a questionnaire. This is literally writing as a companion on your social media application, and it watches over you.
Sure. And just before the show, you were giving me an illustration of something that your daughter said.
Well, you know, I'm father of 4 children, and I tend to take their advice more often than most. And I was telling her about this new company, and I was explaining it and just what kind of revolution it's setting in the mental health and well-being industry. And the fact that it can reach so many people in a ubiquitous way, just over social media, and then be their companion. And she said, it sounds interesting, Dad, but I really want to understand it better. So I said, here, use it. And she had this wow moment. She called me on the phone about 15 minutes later, and she said, I got this report, and it showed me not my post over all my social media platforms. It showed me everything that's been going on in my life over the last year and a half, from my wellness, from my anxiety, from my sentiments on things, from my activity, times that I use and everything. And I think of myself as a well person. But what I found is back in September of last year, the gauge was going from green to yellow and starting to hit red.
Sure.
Well, you know what September was last year. That's when you broke up with your boyfriend, right? And she said, that's right. And then what was even more interesting is I got my first week's report, because every week you get a new report from the system. And it showed me that I was trending yellow, and I couldn't understand what that was at the time. But now it's like, rather than falling into that broken record pattern of this affected me, I didn't go to work that week, I was able to do something about it. Just that awareness was really important to her, not just the engagement, but the awareness.
Sure. And the media's been talking about this problem that you're solving for years. But recently, I want to say 2 months ago, the Surgeon General came out with a big announcement. Here's a clip from CNBC.
The Surgeon General taking on social media platforms to combat what he is calling an emergency mental health crisis. In a New York Times op-ed piece, the Surgeon General writes, it's time to require a Surgeon General's warning label on social media platforms stating that social media is associated with significant mental health harms for adolescents. The Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, joins us this morning. And Dr. Murthy, thank you for being here today. This is something, the move that you made earlier this week was one that definitely caught our attention, and I'm sure a lot of other people's as well. Explain why you think that this is a situation that warrants that sort of a label.
Well, we're living in the middle of a youth mental health crisis. This is the worst mental health crisis among young people that I have seen in nearly 30 years of public health. And it has now become increasingly clear that one of the key drivers of that mental health crisis is, in fact, social media. We have to keep in mind that adolescents are not just small adults. They're at a unique phase of brain development where they're particularly sensitive to social suggestion, to social comparison, and their impulse control is not fully developed either. And what we are seeing is, unfortunately, many young people are exposed to significant harms online, whether it's sexual content, violent content, whether it's bullying and harassment, including from strangers, or exposure to features that would seek to manipulate their developing brains into excessive use. And that collectively takes a toll, which is why we found in the advisory I issued last year that young people who are spending 3 hours or more on social media face double the risk of anxiety and depression symptoms. So this is a profound public health challenge for us. What is striking to me is if this happened, if we saw this kind of data and evidence of young people themselves raising their hand and saying, these products are harming me or exposing me to dangers, with parents saying that as well, we would have raised flags years ago. We would have taken action. We should have done the same thing here years ago. So the warning label I'm calling for will help parents and young people understand the risks that we see, but it's part of a broader set of reforms I've called for, which are important to ultimately make the platforms safer for our kids.
There is a lot of money from the social media companies that's been spent lobbying Congress to try and say, no, we don't want restrictions that are placed on us. We can do this ourselves. What do you think of the efforts that the industry has taken on to try and say that we will police ourselves on this?
Well, social media has been around for nearly 20 years. And in that time, the companies have had plenty of opportunities to do it by themselves. And most importantly, to demonstrate with scientific evidence that the steps that they are taking are actually effective in making the platform safe for our kids. Yet we have not seen that evidence. When I talk to independent researchers around the country, what they tell me most consistently is that they cannot get all of the data they need from social media companies to fully assess the mental health impact of the platforms on our kids. Now, I'll tell you this as a parent. As a parent of 2 young children, I do not want to feel, like any other parent doesn't want to feel, that a company that's making the products my kids are using is hiding data from me about the impact on their mental health. Yet that is the situation we find ourselves in today. So, if companies are taking actions, that's great. But what we need to see as Americans is proof that these are actually effective in keeping our kids safe. And right now, there's plenty of evidence to say that the platforms are still not safe for our children.
And I think that was a big wake-up call for a lot of parents. I mean, parents were aware that it had, a downside, but to have a Surgeon General come out and say, we need to put a warning label on like cigarettes, big deal. Let's talk about privacy, because I know that's a big concern for everybody.
It is. And as you move up categories and you move from adolescents to young adults to working professionals, you think about their privacy. And it's not just their private data, but you're talking about their private health and their mental well-being. We really work to deliver a product that is highly personalized for an individual, but also it's private and confidential. No one else has access to it. So we're built around that premise, and that really is why so many people millions of users trust our application as their companion for their mental well-being journey.
Sure, and before the show, you described this as a 3-legged stool, so that's leg 1. Leg 2 is telemedicine.
Yeah, it's so compelling because when you think about the COVID era and everything that we went through, it was difficult to go places, including the doctor's office. So it became not just a trend, but a way of getting your wellness and well-being overall for your health, these telemedicine platforms that came up. And these were very well-funded companies with a lot of institutional investment dollars behind them that built out both providers and then a platform where people could get help, whether it's acute healthcare issues or even mental health. So companies like Teladoc that have now acquired a company called BetterHelp, they have both the telemedicine and the online therapy providers.
Sure.
But what's interesting about their market is the only time their engagement goes on with their patient or potential patient is when they do have an acute issue. And it's interesting how much burden is put on them now to get more patients, expand their territories and things like that. And we're introducing a whole new paradigm, which is change the engagement model with your clients. And the way we do that is rather than waiting for someone to raise their hand and say, I've got an issue with anxiety that I want to deal with, or with depression, there's so much activity that goes on even before that starts. And we offer that. We give those telemedicine platforms and online therapy provider platforms the ability to enhance the engagement and have a richer engagement with their potential client all the way through the journey, not just dealing with the acute issue. And when it comes time for that issue, when the person raises their hand and says, I'd like help, all of a sudden, all that history of this is what's led up to that moment goes to that online therapy provider, provided that's what the individual wants.
Sure.
So it just jumpstarts that recovery process.
And it gets the patient into the system faster. I mean,
Yes.
We all know that if you put off something, it can just fester. The third leg of the stool, the workforce.
This is probably where the most interesting innovation and trend is going on right now. Seeing high caliber and high quality brands that are out there in, let's say, restaurant, hospitality, quick serve. These have huge workforces, hundreds of thousands of employees. Many of these employees are the face of the company. They're the person at the counter taking the order. They're the person that is at the front desk checking you in.
Sure.
And not only are they the face of the company, but they're also faced with a lot of workplace stress. And so in that, some of the most progressive companies in this space have said, we want to make an investment in our employees. And they've looked at PredictView as doing just that.
Yes.
Because they know that having a healthier, more productive workforce starts with their mental health, not just their physical health. And when they're in a better place, they're a better face to the company.
Yes.
So with these large retail and hospitality companies are doing now is offering this as a free benefit to their employees. Well, it's no coincidence what they've seen from it, Jeff. Immediately you take absenteeism down, you have retention go up, and there's an employee loyalty to an industry that probably has the highest employee churn of any other industry sector. You have higher loyalty. And those three things are strong economic reasons why companies aren't just doing it because it's the right thing. They're doing it because it helps all parties, including their own bottom line.
Absolutely. We've got some video from our library that we're going to put up of just people doom scrolling on social media. When I was coming up in the 70s, obviously there was no social media. We went outside and played. I'm sure there were mental health issues, but not to the degree that we're seeing today.
Not at all. And it's just what social media has done is it's a catalyst and it's elevated everything, both good but also challenging issues too. So I can remember in 6th grade, it wasn't bullying, we called it teasing. And teasing could be pretty harsh, and you felt bad about that. In 6th grade, I believe we had 18 kids in the classroom. Now you're on social media and you've got 1,800 people, 7 by 24,
Right.
that are now teasing you. And this is why so many people are affected by it. And it could be not just that from a teasing or bullying standpoint, the fear of missing out.
Yes.
Individual that's not properly employed and they want to go on a vacation. And now the algorithm is passing them information saying, oh, you want vacation, here's another vacation. Then all of a sudden it's like the dread elevates to another level. That's what we're changing.
Yes.
Because now an individual can see that, I'm caught in the moment, I'm in a broken record loop, and I can jump out of that loop and avoid that going forward. I need to put the device down because I'm redlining.
Wow. We've only got a couple minutes left, so final thoughts. What would you like to leave people with?
Just, we're on our journey. We're not an old company that's been around for a while. We're a company that has put a lot into this practice. We worked with the top research institutions in the country to validate that our technology is accurate. So we accomplished that over the last 2 years. And we're just launching our product this year. So in a way, we're a newbie out there, but dealing with an age-old issue, and we believe we've got a better mousetrap for dealing with that. So
outstanding. Well, thank you for being a disruptor in an industry that certainly needs it right now.
Thank you.
We're going to end with the website, which is PredictView.com. The great Dave Batt. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Jeff.
You bet. That's it for now. We'll see you next time.